I think clearly the area of enforcement has been really struggling, let's be charitable, over the last, let's say 6 to 18 months. I think the Miami example is probably the most glaring example, but you've had some choice words about how the whole USC case was handled, which is ironic because then when the Oregon decision came down, it was like, well, they gave them a free pass. So I don't know if they're too light-handed or too heavy-handed, but you talk about an erosion of trust. So if I could make you czar of the enforcement space in college sports right now, I know there are a lot of things you would probably want to do. Where would you start in terms of making a change?
Wow, I'd probably invest a lot more in enforcement than what we're investing now. And given that the stakes are so high, I'd probably go to outside experts and not rely on internal capabilities that are always going to have restraints in terms of salary scales, how you can compensate people. And if you look at the people doing it, they're of a different caliber than I think you'd get if you went to outside law firms, arbitrators, and other groups that can handle investigations.
I mean, it's an interesting point because, like in this conversation, we're throwing out the NCAA, and I see this all the time, and it kind of drives me bonkers because I feel like too much blame and credit, but these days mostly blame, is placed on the folks in the main office in Indianapolis without people realizing that the NCAA is the schools. And it just seems to me that the reason why the enforcement division is so under-resourced and doesn't really have any true investigative authority is because that's how the schools want it. They want some type of enforcement there because then it's completely the Wild West. Nobody wants that. But I'm not sure that the schools themselves really want the NCAA to have real teeth and real ability to enforce their rules. Am I wrong?
Well, it's certainly not how I feel about it. I think we all have to be concerned about the integrity and the image of college athletics. And, no one likes reading about what we're reading about or some of the stumbles. So I, for one, I believe a lot of my peers would like to see aggressive and effective enforcement. By the same token, there are some challenges that I don't know anyone's got a great answer to, like how do you follow and punish the perpetrators? Coaches are often found out to have done some bad deeds and they move on to a pro league or they go off and do something else and you wind up punishing the schools or you punish the student athletes that are still there. And that I've got a real struggle with. So part of it's the system, part of it's the people doing the investigation and arbitrating. But I think if we could ever get cooperation with some of the pro leagues as well to not allow someone that's transgressed in college go on scot-free and coach.
Can't imagine who you might be able to be thinking about right now.
Well, there are multiple examples.
Philadelphia back east is a guy.
There's multiple examples. But I think that's a key too, because right now that's the other struggle I've got with the system is because of limited ability to punish, you wind up punishing programs and punishing student athletes that had nothing to do with the cheating.
Segue from cooperation with the pro leagues, let's talk about one and done. My feeling is if somebody who is a youngster has an opportunity to be drafted high, he should be able to pursue that opportunity. So why am I wrong?
I don't think you're wrong. And so to clarify my view on this, I think if there's a protege coming out of a high school that does not have an interest in going to college, that wants to go pro, they should be allowed to go pro. I don't think we should force kids to have to go to college if they don't want to go to college. My issue is if, in fact, a high school student wants to go to college, he's getting a scholarship, he's getting all the resources that are brought to bear, there should be a minimum commitment to staying in school. Ideally, I'd love to see them go to school for 3 years if they haven't turned pro before. 2 years would be a step in the right direction. So I hope that clarifies. I'm not saying kids shouldn't be allowed to turn pro if they want to before school. So this is sort
of the quasi-baseball model if they want to come out of high school. Again, it's not said enough. This is an NBA rule. This has nothing to do with how many people rip the NCAA, whatever that means, for this rule. Any sense from you that the NBA is ready to, really the Players Association, but this is they're doing, and I'm not sure how much they really care about the health of
Yeah,
college
I'm not
basketball.
I'm not
or
sure
the
how much
integrity of
they
the student athlete.
carry but they should care for their own selfish reasons. I don't actually think it does anything positive for the NBA or the teams when they've got a lot of kids coming out at a young age, some of whom make it, some of whom don't make it. But it's a much riskier proposition for the NBA and the teams. I think it would actually be better for the NBA and the owners and the Players Association over time to have more of a proving ground in college before they're having to make the big bets. They'll always be the exception, the protege, the LeBron James, whatever. And God bless them. I'd let them go pro if they want to go pro. But I think for the most part, the whole ecosystem, I think the student athletes would be better off. Let's start there. I think how many of them 7 years down the road have made enough money where they're set for life and still have it? Mm-hmm. I mean, the stats are a little bit scary. I think actually at a human level, the kids would be better off being in school longer. Certainly college basketball would be better off. NBA would be better off. So I actually think it makes a lot of sense, and we've got a chance with new leadership coming into the NBA Players Association,
right.
New leadership at the NBA, commissioners like myself. Now we got the college football playoff work behind us, have bandwidth to really engage in this issue. I think we're going to see some progress.
Had a little kerfuffle last April with the situation. Ed Rush, supervisor of officials for basketball, made some, to be charitable, unwise jokes about Sean Miller, the Arizona basketball coach. Sean gets teed up in the Pac-12 tournament.
My man over here, he's never coming back here again. His coach gets a technical foul. Didn't cuss, didn't challenge him. By the way, it's my first technical foul of the year. That's what this is about.
It took you, at first you stood by Ed Rush, who was your hire, is my understanding. He was an NBA guy. I think your coaches wanted Scott Thornley, who was more of a college basketball guy. But looking back on that situation, would you have handled it any differently?
I don't think I would have handled it differently. I wish I would have had some insight into what some of the problems were with Ed's communication beforehand, so we could have acted on it sooner. A lot of what came out was through the media and anonymous reports and all that. So you always prefer to be dealing in a world of perfect information so that you can act. We found out some things, via the report that have allowed us to go back and improve our communication with officials and with our new coordinator, Bobby Deibler, to make sure we don't repeat some of the mistakes that were made. But it was really unfortunate, unwise, some of the joking around, especially when it comes to the integrity of a sport and basketball. Certain things you just don't joke around about. So poor judgment. I mean, Ed's a great guy. He's had a legendary career at the NBA, but it was really poor choices. So having said that, we did an independent investigation and stood by him at the time. What the report showed is that there was not any impact on the integrity of that game, and we unfortunately had to punish Sean, and the report upheld good reasons to do so. So it was a very unfortunate incident for everyone, and we learned from it.